The first signs appeared on a Tuesday morning in Seoul. Park Min-jun, a 23-year-old university student, had invested his entire tuition savings into what seemed like the investment opportunity of a lifetime. The project was called LunaVault, a revolutionary DeFi protocol promising 20% annual returns through an innovative yield farming mechanism. The sleek website, professional team photos, and endorsements from crypto influencers had convinced thousands of investors across South Korea to pour their life savings into the platform. Min-jun refreshed his wallet for the 100th time that morning, watching his investment of $12,000 slowly climb toward $13,000. The smart contract had been audited by a reputable firm, the tokenomics made sense, and the community Discord channel buzzed with excitement about upcoming partnerships with major exchanges. Everything seemed perfect until 9:47 a.m. Korean Standard Time, when the unthinkable happened. The liquidity vanished in a single transaction. $800 million disappeared from the LunaVault protocol in less than 30 seconds. The smart contract that had promised to revolutionize decentralized finance had contained hidden functions that allowed the development team to drain every penny from the platform. What the community thought was a legitimate investment had been an elaborate trap, designed from the very beginning to steal their money. Min-jun stared at his phone screen in disbelief as his portfolio balance dropped to zero. Around him, other students in the university library began receiving similar notifications. Whispers turned to gasps, gasps turned to shouts, and within minutes, the entire campus knew that something catastrophic had occurred in the crypto world. But this was just the beginning of a story that would shake South Korea to its core. The mastermind behind LunaVault was a man known only as Adrian Kim, though that wasn't his real name. Born Kim Sung-ho in Busan 34 years ago, he had spent the last decade perfecting the art of financial deception. His previous schemes had been small-time operations targeting individual investors, but the explosion of cryptocurrency had given him access to a global pool of victims willing to hand over their money based on nothing more than promises and code. Adrian had assembled his team carefully over 18 months, recruiting developers from Eastern Europe, marketing specialists from Southeast Asia, and social media influencers from North America. None of them knew the true nature of the project they were building. Each believed they were creating a legitimate DeFi protocol that would revolutionize yield farming. The beauty of Adrian's plan was that even his own team members were victims, their reputations destroyed alongside the investors they had unknowingly helped to defraud. The technical execution was flawless. The smart contract appeared legitimate to external auditors because it functioned exactly as advertised for the first 6 months. Real yields were paid out to early investors, creating a sense of trust and legitimacy that attracted larger and larger deposits. The hidden drain function was buried deep within the code, disguised as an emergency withdrawal mechanism that could only be triggered by a specific sequence of transactions that Adrian had memorized. What happened next shocked the crypto world beyond anything it had experienced before. The theft itself was devastating, but it was the aftermath that transformed a simple rug pull into a national crisis. Min-jun wasn't alone in his desperation. Across Seoul, thousands of young people discovered that their futures had evaporated overnight. University students who had invested their tuition money, young professionals who had put down payments for apartments into the protocol, families who had risked their children's education funds for the promise of financial freedom. The first protest began spontaneously outside the Gangnam district office at 2 in the afternoon. Min-jun had taken the subway from his university, clutching his phone with screenshots of his zero balance. When he arrived, he found hundreds of other victims already gathering, their faces showing the same mixture of rage and disbelief that he felt. Someone had brought a megaphone, and testimonies began pouring out. A middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen spoke through tears about the $50,000 she had invested from her late husband's insurance payout. A young father explained how he had put his daughter's college fund into LunaVault after seeing the glowing reviews on YouTube. An elderly man described liquidating his retirement savings to chase the 20% returns that would have secured his medical care for the next decade. As the sun set over Seoul, the crowd had grown to over 3,000 people. Social media amplified their voices, with the hashtag LunaVault scam trending across Korean Twitter within hours. But the protesters weren't just venting their frustration. They were organizing. The movement found its leader in an unexpected figure. Dr. Sarah Lim was a blockchain researcher at Seoul National University who had published papers warning about the risks of unregulated DeFi protocols. She hadn't lost money in LunaVault, but she understood the technical details of how the scam had operated better than anyone else. When she saw the growing crowd of victims, she felt a responsibility to help them channel their anger into action. Dr. Lim climbed onto a makeshift platform constructed from plastic crates and addressed the crowd through the megaphone. Her voice carried across the square as she explained exactly how they had been deceived. She broke down the smart contract code in terms everyone could understand, showing how Adrian Kim had hidden the drain function among thousands of lines of legitimate programming. More importantly, she had a plan. The South Korean government had been slow to regulate cryptocurrency, treating it as a niche technical curiosity rather than a serious financial instrument. This regulatory gap had allowed projects like LunaVault to operate without oversight, taking advantage of investors who had no legal recourse when things went wrong. Dr. Lim proposed that the victims band together to force regulatory change, not just for themselves but for future investors who might fall prey to similar schemes. What started as a protest became a movement. The LunaVault victims organized themselves into committees, each focused on different aspects of their campaign. One group worked on tracking down Adrian Kim and his associates, scouring blockchain records and social media for clues about their real identities and whereabouts. Another committee focused on legal action, pooling resources to hire lawyers and explore options for asset recovery. A third group concentrated on political pressure, organizing meetings with lawmakers and regulators to demand immediate action. The investigation committee made the first breakthrough 3 days after the rug pull. A programmer named Lee Jong-soo had been analyzing the LunaVault smart contract when he noticed something strange about the transaction timestamps. The drain function hadn't been triggered randomly. It had been activated at the exact moment when a specific wallet address had made a small test transaction to the protocol. This suggested that Adrian Kim was monitoring the blockchain in real time, waiting for the perfect moment to execute his plan. Jong-soo dug deeper into the blockchain records, following the trail of the stolen funds as they moved through multiple wallets and mixing services. Most rug pull operators were amateurs who made mistakes that allowed investigators to track their movements, but Adrian had covered his tracks with professional expertise. The $800 million had been split into thousands of smaller transactions, moved through privacy coins, and ultimately deposited into exchanges in countries with weak financial oversight. But Adrian had made one critical error. Hidden among the thousands of transactions was a single transfer that revealed his location. On the day before the rug pull, Adrian had moved exactly 0.00234 Bitcoin to a wallet that had been used to pay for a VPN service. The Bitcoin amount seemed random, but Jong-soo recognized it as a timestamp encoded in cryptocurrency. When converted to human-readable format, it revealed the exact date and time when Adrian had tested his drain function from an internet cafe in Manila, Philippines. The discovery electrified the victim community. Adrian Kim wasn't hiding in some crypto-friendly haven like El Salvador or Switzerland. He was in the Philippines, a country that had recently strengthened its cooperation with South Korean law enforcement. The victims had found their target. Dr. Lim coordinated with the legal committee to share this information with South Korean prosecutors, who immediately contacted their counterparts in Manila. But the government response was frustratingly slow. Bureaucratic procedures, jurisdictional complications, and diplomatic protocols meant that any official action would take months or years to materialize. The victims couldn't wait that long. What happened next would become legendary in the cryptocurrency community. The victims decided to take matters into their own hands. Using crowdfunding platforms, they raised over $200,000 to hire a private investigation firm with operations in Southeast Asia. The firm, led by a former CIA operative named Michael Torres, specialized in tracking down financial criminals who operated across international borders. Torres had worked similar cases involving cryptocurrency fraud, and he understood that traditional law enforcement was often too slow and bureaucratic to catch sophisticated scammers. Torres flew to Manila with a team of digital forensics specialists and local investigators. Their mission was simple: find Adrian Kim, gather evidence of his crimes, and coordinate with Filipino authorities to ensure his arrest before he could flee to another country. What they discovered in Manila would shock even the experienced investigators. Adrian Kim wasn't living the lavish lifestyle that most people associated with cryptocurrency scammers. Instead of luxury hotels and expensive cars, he had rented a modest apartment in Makati and was living under an assumed identity as a software consultant. He had learned from previous cases where flashy spending had led to the downfall of crypto criminals. His strategy was to lay low for several years, allowing the investigation to lose momentum while he gradually moved the stolen funds into untraceable assets. But Adrian had underestimated the determination of his victims and the reach of modern investigation techniques. Torres's team used a combination of traditional surveillance and cutting-edge blockchain analysis to build a comprehensive picture of Adrian's activities in Manila. They tracked his daily routines, identified his contacts, and monitored his digital footprint across multiple platforms. Most importantly, they discovered that Adrian was still actively managing the stolen funds, moving small amounts between wallets to test security measures and prepare for larger transfers. The breakthrough came when Torres's team intercepted communications between Adrian and a money laundering service based in Dubai. The messages revealed that Adrian was planning to convert the majority of his stolen cryptocurrency into gold bullion, which would then be physically transported to a series of bank vaults in Switzerland. The operation was scheduled to begin within 2 weeks, after which the funds would become essentially unrecoverable. Torres immediately shared this intelligence with both the South Korean prosecutors and the Filipino Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center. The urgency of the situation finally motivated official action. A joint task force was assembled, combining South Korean financial investigators, Filipino cybercrime specialists, and international law enforcement agencies coordinated through Interpol. The arrest operation was planned for a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the original rug pull. Adrian followed the same routine every day, leaving his apartment at 7:30 to buy coffee from a street vendor before walking to a co-working space where he conducted his cryptocurrency operations. The plan was to intercept him during this walk, when he would be isolated from any security measures he might have installed in his apartment or office. But as the task force prepared to move, they received intelligence that would change everything. Adrian Kim wasn't working alone. The investigation had uncovered evidence of a much larger criminal organization that specialized in cryptocurrency fraud across Southeast Asia. LunaVault was just one of dozens of projects that this group had launched over the past 2 years, collectively stealing over $3 billion from victims around the world. Adrian was a mid-level operator in this network, not the mastermind that everyone had assumed. The real leader was a woman known as the Architect, whose true identity remained unknown to law enforcement. She had built a sophisticated operation that recruited talented developers and marketers to create legitimate-looking cryptocurrency projects, then used those projects to steal funds from investors before the team members even realized they were participating in a scam. The victims weren't just the investors who lost their money, they were also the unwitting accomplices who had helped build the fraudulent platforms. Dr. Lim received this information through her contacts in the investigation and faced an impossible choice. The victims could proceed with Adrian's arrest, recovering a portion of their stolen funds and achieving some measure of justice. But doing so would likely alert the Architect to the ongoing investigation, allowing her to disappear along with the billions of dollars she had stolen from victims around the world. The alternative was to use Adrian as bait to catch the Architect, but this would require allowing him to remain free for an extended period while investigators built a case against his superior. The LunaVault victims would have to wait even longer for justice, with no guarantee that the larger operation could be successfully dismantled. The debate split the victim community. Min-jun and many of the younger investors wanted immediate action. They had lost everything and needed their money back as quickly as possible to salvage their futures. But Drive, Lim and others argued for the longer view, pointing out that catching the Architect could prevent thousands of future victims from experiencing the same devastation they had endured. The decision was made by vote among the organized victim groups. By a narrow margin, they chose to delay Adrian's arrest and cooperate with the expanded investigation. It was a painful choice that would test the community's resolve over the coming months. What followed was the most complex cryptocurrency investigation in law enforcement history. The Joint Task Force, now expanded to include agencies from 12 countries, began a delicate operation to monitor Adrian's communications while allowing him to believe he was still operating undetected. They tracked his movements, recorded his conversations, and analyzed every transaction he made, looking for connections to the Architect's broader network. The investigation revealed the staggering scope of the criminal organization. Beyond the DeFi protocols like LunaVault, the Architect's network had created fake NFT collections, fraudulent initial coin offerings, and even legitimate-seeming cryptocurrency exchanges that existed solely to steal customer deposits. The operation had tentacles reaching into every major crypto market, from the United States to Nigeria to Singapore. Most disturbing was the discovery that several high-profile crypto influencers and industry experts were unwitting participants in the schemes. The Architect had cultivated relationships with prominent figures in the cryptocurrency community, feeding them information about upcoming projects and encouraging them to promote these platforms to their audiences. These influencers genuinely believed they were highlighting innovative blockchain technologies, unaware that they were helping to drive investments into elaborate theft operations. The psychological profiles developed by the task force painted a picture of the Architect as a criminal mastermind unlike anything law enforcement had previously encountered. Unlike traditional financial criminals who were motivated primarily by greed, she seemed driven by a deeper compulsion to exploit the trust and optimism that characterized the early cryptocurrency community. Her projects were designed not just to steal money, but to undermine faith in the entire decentralized finance ecosystem. 6 months into the expanded investigation, the task force finally identified the Architect's real identity. She was Dr. Elena Kozlov, a former economics professor from Moscow who had been researching cryptocurrency adoption patterns before transitioning into what authorities initially assumed was legitimate blockchain consulting. Her academic background had given her deep insights into investor psychology and market dynamics, knowledge she had weaponized to create increasingly sophisticated fraud schemes. Dr. Kozlov had disappeared from academic circles 3 years earlier, around the same time that the first suspicious DeFi protocols had begun appearing. Intelligence agencies now realized that her research into cryptocurrency adoption had been a cover for developing the social engineering techniques that made her scams so effective. She had studied how people made investment decisions in the crypto space, identifying the psychological triggers that could convince rational individuals to hand over their life savings to complete strangers. The task force faced a new challenge. Dr. Kozlov was believed to be operating from somewhere in Eastern Europe, but her exact location remained unknown. She communicated with her network through encrypted channels and multiple layers of proxy servers, never staying in one place long enough for authorities to track her down. Unlike Adrian Kim, who had made the mistake of establishing a routine in Manila, the architect moved constantly and left no digital footprints that could reveal her whereabouts. Meanwhile, the LunaVault victims were growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress in recovering their stolen funds. The initial anger that had fueled their protests was evolving into despair as months passed without resolution. Some victims had been forced to drop out of university, others had lost their homes, and several had experienced serious mental health crises as the full impact of their losses became clear. Min-jun found himself becoming one of the most vocal critics of the decision to delay Adrian's arrest. His family had cut off financial support after learning about his cryptocurrency investment, and he was working 3 part-time jobs to pay for basic necessities while living in a tiny studio apartment. The promise of justice seemed increasingly hollow as his daily struggles intensified. Dr. Lim tried to maintain morale by organizing regular updates and support meetings, but the victim community was fracturing under the pressure. Some members had hired their own lawyers to pursue independent legal action, while others had given up entirely and stopped participating in the organized response. The unity that had made their initial protests so powerful was dissolving as individual desperation overwhelmed collective purpose. The breakthrough finally came from an unexpected source. One of Adrian Kim's former team members, a Ukrainian developer named Dmitry Petrov, had grown suspicious about the true nature of the projects he had been working on. After the LunaVault collapse, Dmitry began investigating the smart contracts he had helped create, searching for clues about what had really happened. His analysis revealed code signatures that didn't match the programming style of the supposed development team, suggesting that key functions had been inserted by someone else after the main code had been written. Dmitry reached out to Dr. Lim through encrypted channels, offering to share his findings in exchange for protection from potential retaliation. The information he provided was invaluable: detailed records of communications with Dr. Kozlov, including metadata that revealed her approximate location during various stages of the LunaVault development process. The metadata showed that Dr. Kozlov had been accessing the project's development servers from IP addresses in Prague, Czech Republic, during the final weeks before the rug pull. Cross-referencing this information with travel records and financial transactions, the task force identified a high-end apartment in Prague's Vinohrady district that matched the architect's operational profile. The arrest operation was planned for maximum impact. Rather than simply apprehending Kozlov, law enforcement agencies coordinated simultaneous raids across 8 countries, targeting the entire network of criminals and seizing digital assets wherever they could be located. The operation, codenamed Blockchain Justice, represented the largest coordinated response to cryptocurrency crime in history. On a cold Thursday morning in Prague, Czech police surrounded the apartment building where Kozlov had been hiding. The raid was conducted with precision and overwhelming force, designed to prevent any opportunity for the destruction of evidence or the transfer of remaining stolen funds. When officers broke down the door to apartment 4B at exactly 6 a.m. local time, they found Drive Kozlov calmly sitting at a computer, apparently expecting their arrival. The scene inside the apartment was surreal. Multiple high-end computers were running sophisticated trading algorithms, automatically managing hundreds of cryptocurrency wallets across dozens of exchanges. Whiteboards covered with complex diagrams showed the structure of various fraud schemes, with victim profiles and psychological manipulation techniques detailed with academic precision. It was the nerve center of a criminal operation that had stolen billions of dollars, disguised as the modest home office of a freelance consultant. Dr. Kozlov's arrest made international headlines, but the victory was incomplete. Despite seizing her computers and freezing numerous cryptocurrency wallets, investigators estimated that less than 30% of the stolen funds could be recovered. The remaining money had been converted into privacy coins, moved through mixing services, or invested in physical assets that were hidden in jurisdictions beyond the reach of law enforcement. For the LunaVault victims, the arrest brought mixed emotions. Min-jun received notification that he would recover approximately $4,000 of his original $12,000 investment, a significant amount but far from enough to restore his financial situation. The partial recovery was better than nothing, but it couldn't undo the months of hardship he had endured or guarantee his ability to complete his education. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the full scope of Dr. Kozlov's operation and its impact on victims around the world. Prosecutors presented evidence of over 200 fraudulent cryptocurrency projects that had collectively stolen more than $3 billion from investors in 47 countries. The victims ranged from university students like Min-jun to retirees who had lost their life savings, from small-scale investors to institutional funds that had been deceived by sophisticated presentations and fake endorsements. During her trial, Drive Kozlov showed no remorse for her actions. She argued that her victims had made voluntary investment decisions based on publicly available information, and that the volatility and risks of cryptocurrency were well known to anyone participating in the market. Her defense team portrayed her as a brilliant entrepreneur who had simply operated within the gray areas of financial regulation, taking advantage of opportunities that traditional institutions had ignored. The prosecution painted a different picture. They argued that Dr. Kozlov had systematically exploited the trust and optimism that made the cryptocurrency community special, using advanced psychological manipulation techniques to convince victims to hand over money they couldn't afford to lose. Her crimes weren't just financial. They were an attack on the fundamental principles of decentralized finance and community-driven innovation. The trial lasted 8 months and attracted global attention from the cryptocurrency community. Victim impact statements filled entire days of proceedings, with hundreds of people testifying about how the fraud had destroyed their lives. Min-jun traveled to Prague to give his testimony, describing how the loss of his tuition money had forced him to delay his graduation and take on crushing debt just to survive. Dr. Kozlov was ultimately convicted on 247 counts of fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution of over $2 billion, though prosecutors acknowledged that most of this money would never be recovered. Adrian Kim and 12 other members of the network received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, while several lower-level participants who cooperated with authorities received reduced sentences or immunity. The LunaVault case became a watershed moment for cryptocurrency regulation around the world. Governments that had previously taken a hands-off approach to digital assets began implementing comprehensive oversight frameworks designed to prevent similar frauds. The European Union passed the Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation. The United States strengthened enforcement by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and South Korea established a dedicated cryptocurrency crimes unit within its Financial Intelligence Agency. But regulatory changes couldn't undo the damage that had already been done to thousands of victims. The LunaVault Victims Association, led by Dr. Lim, evolved into a broader advocacy organization focused on supporting cryptocurrency fraud victims and pushing for stronger consumer protections. They lobbied for victim compensation funds, improved investor education programs, and better coordination between international law enforcement agencies. Min-jun eventually completed his university education, though it took him an extra 2 years and left him with significant student debt. The experience had changed his perspective on both cryptocurrency and the broader financial system. He became involved in blockchain security research, determined to use his technical skills to prevent others from experiencing the devastation he had endured. His work contributed to the development of improved smart contract auditing tools and early warning systems for detecting potential rug pulls. The crypto world learned hard lessons from the LunaVault disaster and the broader revelation of Dr. Kozlov's criminal network. The incident highlighted the dangers of unregulated innovation and the importance of due diligence in a space where technology could easily outpace human understanding. It also demonstrated the power of victim organizing and the potential for international cooperation in combating sophisticated financial crimes. 5 years after the rug pull, Min-jun reflects on how the experience shaped his life and career. The financial loss was devastating, but it also introduced him to a community of people who refused to accept victimization passively. The protests that began in Seoul had evolved into a global movement for cryptocurrency accountability, with former victims becoming some of the most effective advocates for blockchain security and regulatory reform. The LunaVault case remains a cautionary tale about the risks of investing in unregulated financial products, but it's also a story about the power of community action and the possibility of justice in the digital age. The victims who gathered in that Seoul square 5 years ago didn't just seek compensation for their losses, they demanded systemic changes that would protect future investors from similar exploitation. Dr. Elena Kozlov sits in a Czech prison, serving her 25-year sentence while authorities continue working to trace and recover the billions of dollars she stole. Her criminal network has been dismantled, but the cryptocurrency space continues to evolve rapidly, creating new opportunities for both innovation and exploitation. The vigilance and advocacy of the LunaVault victims serve as an ongoing reminder that the promise of decentralized finance comes with responsibilities that extend far beyond individual profit and loss. The riot that began with a rug pull became something much larger, a movement that transformed how the world approaches cryptocurrency regulation and victim protection. In the end, the scammers took their money, but they couldn't destroy the community that emerged from the ashes of their deception. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Crypto. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.